Right now, as you are watching this, two massive oil refineries inside Russia are on fire. Not near a battlefield, not close to the front lines, not in some village caught in crossfire. These fires are burning hundreds of kilometers deep inside Russian territory, in cities that most Russians believed were completely untouchable. And the people who lit those fires did not do it from a distance by accident. They planned it. They built the weapons to make it happen. And they chose tonight, of all nights, to send a message that the entire world needs to hear. Tonight is June 28th, 2026. It is Ukraine's Constitution Day. And Ukraine chose to mark this anniversary not with speeches in a grand hall or fireworks over a peaceful capital. Ukraine marked it the way this war has forced it to mark everything, with precision strikes, burning fuel depots, and a clear declaration to Moscow that no corner of Russia is beyond reach anymore. Stay with me, because what happened in the last few hours is not just another headline in a long and exhausting war. It is a turning point in how this conflict is being fought, and possibly in how it ends. Let me break it all down for you. It began just after midnight. Ukrainian long-range drones, flying low and fast, punched through Russia's air defense systems and struck the Slavyansk oil refinery in the town of Slavyansk on Kuban, located in Russia's Krasnodar region. This facility sits approximately 300 kilometers from Ukraine's front line. That number matters. 300 kilometers is not a short distance. Getting drones through Russian radar coverage, electronic jamming systems, and layered missile defense networks to reach a target that far inside enemy territory requires serious engineering, serious planning, and serious nerve. The explosion that followed was not small. Multiple petroleum storage tanks caught fire, and the blaze spread rapidly to a connected gas processing and oil stabilization facility operated by a Russian state energy company. The fire was so large and so intense that NASA's Satellite Fire Monitoring System, a platform designed to track wildfires from space, detected the heat signature at 3:33 in the morning local time. Think about that. A fire inside a Russian industrial complex was big enough to register on a NASA satellite. Flames spread into the surrounding village of Poltavska. Even the local airport appeared as a fire zone on satellite thermal data. Footage posted on social media, footage that Russian officials could not suppress fast enough, showed massive walls of flame, thick black columns of smoke rising into the pre-dawn sky, and the unmistakable chaos of a facility that was not designed to survive what just happened to it. One person was killed, another was injured. The regional governor of Krasnodar, Veniamin Kondratyev, officially confirmed the strike, then immediately tried to spin it by claiming it was caused by falling drone debris. The videos did not support that explanation, not even slightly. This refinery is not a random industrial target. The Slavyansk facility processes approximately 5.2 million tons of crude oil every single year. It supplies roughly 9% of all refined petroleum products across Russia's entire southern federal district. It produces aviation kerosene, fuel for military aircraft. It supplies motor gasoline and diesel to Russian forces stationed across the south, including in Russian-occupied Crimea. Burning it is not symbolic. It is a direct military operation targeting the fuel supply of Russia's armed forces. But Ukraine was not done. At almost exactly the same time that Krasnodar was burning, another wave of drones was reaching a completely different target, one that sent an even louder message. The Yaroslavl oil refinery, located in the city of Yaroslavl in central Russia, was struck. This city sits over 700 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, and it is just 250 kilometers from Moscow itself. Let that distance sink in. Ukrainian drones traveled 700 kilometers through one of the most heavily defended airspaces on Earth, reached a major industrial facility less than 3 hours' drive from the Russian capital, and set it on fire. The regional governor, Mikhail Yevrayev, confirmed the attack. City exits were temporarily blocked. Movement restrictions were placed on roads leading toward Moscow. Emergency services scrambled. The Russian Ministry of Defense later claimed its air defenses had intercepted over 200 Ukrainian drones during the overnight operation. But the refineries in Krasnodar and Yaroslavl were already burning. Air defense intercept numbers mean very little when the targets are on fire. Nowhere inside Russia feels safe anymore. That is the message. And it was received. Russia's response came fast, and it came hard. Just before 2 a.m. local time, ballistic missiles began raining down on Kyiv. Ukrainian journalists on the ground heard the first explosions crack through the darkness over the capital. Air defense systems activated. Interceptors streaked across the sky in bright orange lines. A second missile wave hit at 2:35 a.m. The head of Kyiv's military administration confirmed at least 2 people were injured in the Darnitsky district. Fires broke out near a residential building, at a service station, and at a non-residential structure in the city. Simultaneously, explosions were reported in Sumy and Kharkiv, 2 cities in eastern Ukraine that have endured some of the heaviest Russian bombardment throughout this war. Air raid sirens screamed across central and eastern Ukraine for hours. Residents who had already lived through Russia's devastating June 15th attack on Kyiv, an attack that killed 5 people and set the ancient Kyiv-Pechersk-Lavra monastery on fire, were once again jolted from sleep and forced into bomb shelters in the middle of the night. This is not an escalation in response to tonight's strikes. This is simply Tuesday for Ukraine, or Saturday, or any other day of the week. Russia has been doing this every single night for years. The only difference is that now Ukraine is doing something back, and doing it in a way that is genuinely hurting Russia where it matters most. President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the Ukrainian people this morning on Constitution Day. He did not speak from behind a ceremonial podium in a decorated hall. He spoke the way he always speaks during this war, directly, plainly, and without pretending that anything about this situation is normal. He confirmed both strikes. He named the targets, Krasnodar and Yaroslavl. He called them, in his own words, long-range sanctions. He explained that every single one of Ukraine's deep strikes represents a direct reduction in the resources that fuel Russia's ability to continue this war. He thanked Ukraine's warriors, and he made a promise that was as clear as it was firm. Ukraine will not stop. Zelensky has been remarkably transparent about this strategy. He has said openly that if Ukraine burns, Russia must also feel the fire. He is not threatening Russian civilians. He is targeting the machinery of war, the refineries, the fuel depots, the pipelines, the oil revenues that pay for every missile that crashes into a Ukrainian apartment building every night. He shares footage of Russian strikes on his social media. He names the facilities. He credits the operators. He wants ordinary Russians to understand that there is one person responsible for all of this, and that person's name is Vladimir Putin. To understand what happened tonight, you have to understand the months of strategic groundwork that made it possible. Because what burned in Russia overnight did not happen because of a single lucky strike. It happened because Ukraine has been systematically dismantling Russia's energy infrastructure for months, with a level of consistency and effectiveness that has genuinely shocked energy analysts around the world. Go back to June 15th. Russian forces launched a massive combined attack on Kyiv. 5 people were killed. The Kyiv-Pechersk-Lavra, a monastery founded in the 11th century, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the holiest places in all of Eastern Christianity, was left in flames by a Russian missile. The world condemned it. Russia said nothing meaningful in response. Zelensky did not shrug. One day later, on June 16th, Ukrainian drones struck the Moscow oil refinery, the largest refinery in the Moscow region, a facility that supplies 40% of the fuel market for the Russian capital. It went offline. Operations halted. 2 days after that, on June 18th, Ukraine hit it again in what became the largest drone strike on Moscow in the entire history of the full-scale war. The sky above the Russian capital filled with black smoke. More than 500 flights were canceled or delayed at Moscow's airports. Putin was in Kazan, 700 kilometers away, hosting foreign dignitaries and trying to project an image of a leader fully in control of his country. His capital was burning. Then the strikes kept coming. The Lukoil Nizhegorod Orgsyntez refinery in Kstovo, Russia's fourth largest refinery, was hit and taken offline. The Moscow refinery, struck again on June 19th, was reported by Reuters to be offline until at least the end of 2026. Ukraine hit oil terminals on both the Baltic and Black Sea coasts. It struck oil stabilization units, fuel depots in Crimea, pipeline infrastructure. In total, more than 24 Ukrainian strikes have targeted Russian refineries since March 2026 alone. 8 of Russia's 10 biggest refineries have now been damaged or destroyed. The International Energy Agency stated publicly that more than 20% of Russia's entire refining capacity has been knocked out of service, and called this development completely unprecedented in the history of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. None of this is accidental. Ukraine built this capability over years, quietly and systematically, while international debates raged about what Kyiv was and was not allowed to strike. Ukraine's domestic drone industry developed long-range platforms capable of carrying heavy explosive payloads, equipped with advanced anti-jamming systems that can navigate through Russian electronic warfare coverage. Ukraine built its own cruise missiles. It developed strike systems capable of reaching 700, 800, even 1,000 kilometers into Russian territory, with enough accuracy to hit specific fuel storage tanks at specific facilities at specific times. The drone operators who flew tonight's missions are not amateurs. They are the product of years of training, engineering, and hard-won battlefield experience. The consequences of this campaign are no longer theoretical. They are showing up at gas stations all across Russia, including in places that have absolutely nothing to do with the war zone. On June 21st, Russian-installed authorities in occupied Crimea suspended all civilian fuel sales. Not rationed, suspended. No gasoline for private individuals, no diesel for small businesses. Fuel was reserved exclusively for state agencies. Children's summer camps were canceled. Tourist stays were shut down until September. The tourist economy of Crimea, one of the main reasons Putin told his own people that seizing the peninsula in 2014 was worth it, has effectively collapsed under the weight of Ukraine's energy campaign. Then it spread. By June 24th, at least 55 of Russia's 83 federal regions were reporting either mandatory government restrictions on fuel sales or voluntary restrictions imposed by gas station chains trying to manage dwindling supply. Rationing reached Omsk. It reached Novosibirsk. It reached Irkutsk, cities that sit 2,500 kilometers southeast of Moscow, near the Kazakhstani border, as far from the war as you can get inside Russia. In the Republic of Tiva in southern Siberia, gasoline prices surged more than 9% in a single week, reaching the highest price of any region in the country. By today, June 28th, fuel rationing has been confirmed in at least 56 Russian regions. In Kursk, just across the border from Ukraine, residents said fuel limits made it nearly impossible to run portable generators during Russian-caused power outages, and that evacuating during air raids had become nearly impossible because gas stations were capping purchases at just 20 liters per vehicle. In Khanty-Mansiysk, one of the largest oil-producing regions on the entire planet, gas stations were restricting sales, while oil wells were being shut down because there was nowhere to put the oil they were pulling out of the ground. One resident summed up the absurdity perfectly. "We are drowning in oil and there is no gasoline." Russia's central bank has explicitly connected Ukraine's drone campaign to domestic economic instability. Russia's deputy prime minister is now weighing a full ban on diesel exports just to stabilize the country's own fuel supply. Analysts at the Carnegie Russia Eurasia Center have described Russia's oil industry resilience as being stretched dangerously thin, framing the situation as a race between Ukrainian drones and Russian repair crews, and saying that if Ukraine can maintain the pace of attacks, the advantage clearly belongs to Kyiv. Tonight, Ukraine maintained the pace. It is worth pausing for a moment to appreciate what Ukraine has actually accomplished here, because it is genuinely remarkable. In February 2022, when Russia launched its full-scale invasion, Ukraine was not a country known for its drone industry. It did not have long-range precision strike capability against a nuclear-armed adversary. It did not have the infrastructure, the factories, or the engineering workforce to build the kind of weapons it is now using to hit targets 700 kilometers inside Russia. 4 years later, all of that has changed. Ukraine has built drone factories in basements, in warehouses, in converted industrial spaces across the country. It has trained thousands of operators. It has developed its own cruise missiles, weapons like the Flamingo, which Zelensky recently confirmed successfully struck the Volgograd military plant that manufactures launch systems for Russia's Yars and Topol-M strategic missiles, as well as launchers for the Iskander tactical ballistic missile system. Ukraine struck a factory that builds the very weapons Russia uses to destroy Ukrainian cities. It did so with a weapon it built on Ukrainian soil. That is not a small thing. That is a country that has decided it will fight this war on its own terms, and has done the hard work to make that decision mean something. But here is the truth that must not be buried under the drama of burning Russian refineries. While Ukraine has been reaching into Russia's heartland, Russia has not stopped reaching into Ukraine's. Every night that Ukrainian drones are flying toward Moscow, Russian drones and missiles are flying toward Kyiv, toward Kharkiv, toward Zaporizhia, toward Odessa, toward every city and town and village where Ukrainian families are trying to survive. In the past 7 days alone, Russia fired approximately 1,400 attack drones, nearly 1,500 guided aerial bombs, and 19 missiles of various types across 15 different Ukrainian regions. On June 27th, the night before tonight's strikes, Russia launched 129 Shahed-type attack drones across Ukraine. Air defenses shot down 113 of them. The remaining 13 hit targets at 7 different locations. In Zaporizhia Oblast, 1 person was killed and 23 were injured, including 3 children. In Nikopol, a drone struck a civilian minibus, killing 2 people and wounding at least 12, including 2 12-year-old sisters who were both hospitalized. In Chernihiv, debris from an intercepted drone struck a secondary school. Since October 2022, Kyiv alone has endured over 1,300 drone attacks, more than 250 missile strikes, and more than 200 aerial bombing operations. In 2024, the capital averaged more than 1 air raid alert per day, 500 alerts in a single year, with daily power outages averaging 9 hours. Last winter was the worst Ukraine has experienced since the invasion began. In January 2026, 600,000 Kyiv residents had left the city following attacks that cut heating to half of all residential buildings. By February, the capital was receiving electricity for less than 2 hours a day. Russia is not just trying to degrade Ukraine's military capacity. It is trying to break something inside the Ukrainian people, to make them believe that survival is not possible, that resistance is futile, that they should simply accept whatever terms Moscow demands. 4.5 years of evidence suggest that strategy is not working. Zoom out further, and the picture becomes even more complex. The Trump administration's heavy focus on the Middle East and the ongoing conflict with Iran has reduced American engagement with Ukraine significantly compared to previous years. U.S.-mediated peace talks stalled months ago and have not meaningfully resumed. The acting U.S. ambassador to Ukraine recently stepped down, leaving a critical diplomatic position empty at what observers describe as an extremely sensitive moment. Slovakia's prime minister announced that his country will not pledge military aid to Ukraine at the upcoming NATO summit in Ankara in July. These are real headwinds. They matter. And yet, something appears to be shifting. Zelensky has described what he called an important coordination call with President Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron shortly before the June Moscow refinery strikes. He hinted at what he called significant upcoming developments, and noted that Ukraine's allies have specifically acknowledged the precision and effectiveness of its long-range campaign. There is cautious optimism in Kyiv that Trump, increasingly skeptical of Putin's intentions, may be moving towards supporting tougher measures to force Russia to a genuine negotiating table. Leading analysts are paying close attention. Experts at Chatham House, RUSI, and T.S. Lombard have all noted that something fundamental has changed in the logic of this war. One senior analyst described Ukraine's deep strike campaign as the most significant military development of the past year. Another said Ukraine is proving to the Russian public that the cost of this war is not going down. It is going up, every week, in every part of the country. A third said flatly that Russia's remaining territorial ambitions in Ukraine have narrowed dramatically, and that the end phase of this conflict may be closer than it appears. Russia launched this invasion in February 2022, with the expectation that Ukraine would collapse within days, that Ukraine's government would flee, that its military would dissolve, that the West would argue briefly and then move on. 4 years and 5 months later, none of those things have happened. Ukraine has not collapsed, its government has not fled, its military has not dissolved. The West has not moved on, though it has grown complicated, tired, and politically divided in ways that create real problems for Kyiv. And Ukraine, the country that was supposed to be erased from the map, is now setting fire to oil refineries within 250 kilometers of Moscow. It is striking the factories that build Russia's most advanced missile systems. It has created a fuel crisis that stretches from Crimea to Siberia. It has forced Russia's central bank to issue warnings about economic instability caused by a country Russia dismissed as a non-state 4 years ago. Every war has a moment when the balance begins to tip, when what seemed permanent starts to feel fragile, when what seemed impossible begins to look achievable. Whether this is that moment for Ukraine, no one can say with certainty. Escalation risk is real. Russia still has nuclear weapons. Russian officials still make nuclear threats, however ritualized those threats have become. Russia is still firing ballistic missiles at Kyiv tonight, and will fire them again tomorrow night. But the math of this war is shifting. Russia is running this conflict on war economy spending that has been sustaining an artificially heated economy for 4 years. The cracks are beginning to show. 56 regions rationing fuel. A deputy prime minister talking about banning diesel exports. A central bank warning about drone-caused economic disruption. A Moscow skyline full of smoke while the president was out of town hosting foreign leaders. These are not the signs of a country winning a war comfortably. On June 28, 2026, Ukraine's Constitution Day, Ukrainian forces did not hold a ceremony. They did not give speeches about sovereignty and freedom in a decorated hall. They sent drones 300 kilometers into Russia to burn a military fuel hub in the south. They sent more drones 700 kilometers into Russia to reach the edge of Moscow. They confirmed the strikes publicly, named every target, and stood behind every decision without apology and without ambiguity. That is what this war looks like in year 5. A country that was supposed to not exist anymore, fighting with weapons it built with its own hands, reaching further into its enemy's territory than any NATO member has done, making the cost of this conflict real for ordinary Russians in a way that official propaganda cannot explain away. And doing all of it while its own capital absorbs ballistic missiles in the middle of the night, while its own people run to shelters, while its own children are hospitalized after drone strikes on civilian buses. The refineries are burning. Kyiv is under fire. Neither side is stopping. This war is not over. But tonight, on Ukraine's Constitution Day, the terms on which this war is being fought changed. Russia felt that change in the dark. It felt it in the flames. It felt it in every liter of aviation fuel that will not reach a Russian fighter jet, in every tank of diesel that will not power a Russian military vehicle, in every gas station across 56 Russian regions where ordinary people are now standing in line for rationed fuel and asking themselves why. Ukraine struck deep tonight. Ukraine struck hard. And the world is watching what comes next. If you want to stay updated on this conflict as it develops, make sure you are subscribed. Share this video if you think people need to understand what is actually happening here. And I will see you in the next one.